Live.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special podcast discussion on Death Stranding. I'm your host, Richard Billy Jr., and today I actually am going to be joined by Mr. Gary A. Swaby. How's it going, Gary?
It's going very good. Thank you very much. How you been?
Doing pretty good. Um, Spent a ton of time playing Death Stranding. Um,
Oh yeah.
you know, yes, this is Hideo Kojima's upcoming game, Kojima Productions. Um, it is going to be dropping on PlayStation 4 on November 8th, and it's coming to PC, which has upset a lot of people. But it is coming to PC uh, next summer, 2020. So I just want to start off this podcast by first, I want to thank Kojima Productions and Sony for sending me a review copy of the game. If you have visited our website, then you know by now that my review is currently on the website. Um, I enjoyed the game. There is, of course, one issue that I did have with the game that we'll get into on this particular show. But overall, I thought it was a solid experience. Um, it's a very, very lengthy game for those of you that like to play long games. Um, and once you do get into a game like this, it's very rich with a lot of storytelling, a lot of excellent performances by the whole cast in the game, stuff like that. So I do want to tell you that if you are planning on picking this up November 8th, make sure that you have set aside some time because it's definitely going to take a while to get through this game. Um, as a good friend once said, if you're thinking about if you're having a steak dinner somewhere and you want the best steak in town, you want to take your time and savor that steak in full. So this is pretty much the equivalent of this game. It's like a fine wine or a fine steak. You want to take your time to really devour it, really take it in, because it is a lot to unpack in the actual game itself. But we are going to talk about a few things today. I'm not going to really get into any spoiler territory because I think that this is a game that you absolutely should play and you should get the story experience for yourself. I am aware that there are people out there that have spoiled some stuff, which is very unfortunate. But I would definitely encourage everybody to check out the game if you are interested. Don't look at any of the spoilers because even if you do see something, you don't have the full context of what it is until you actually play it. So that's definitely something that I would definitely encourage everybody to do is to actually, if you are interested in the game, feel free to check it out. But in terms of just to describe what this game actually is, because I want to make sure I clear up a lot of misconceptions. I know Kojima has said that this is an action game, but it's a different type of genre called the genre, which is something that he essentially is creating, and he calls it the social strand genre, which basically means that it is an action game, but it's a very connected game. And when they say connected, they mean in terms of the actual storytelling, the characters, so on and so forth. And of course, as we'll get into a little bit later, that also has to do with the multiplayer functions within the game as well. But overall, for those that are fans of Metal Gear Solid, I just want to make something very clear right now. This is definitely not Metal Gear Solid. There are aspects about this game that feels as though there are certain things about it that remind me of Metal Gear Solid in terms of how they handle the characters, so on and so forth. But it's definitely not Metal Gear Solid, so I don't want people to go into this experience thinking that this is what this is. It is a very different type of experience. I know that Kojima has plans of trying to expand and make this a much larger franchise, hoping that it has sequels. Obviously, time will tell if that happens because it really does depend on if it sells well. But I think the fact that it's coming to PC and it's on PlayStation 4 is great. That definitely would give me the impression that it has potential to sell well across the board. So hopefully that is ultimately where things go. But yeah, that's just like a brief overview of what this game is. And I think, Gary, you're probably going to have a few more questions about what the game entails. So feel free to ask any questions you want about the game, and I'll do my best to answer them.
All right. Yeah. So Thanks for that introduction. Definitely a good overview of everything. But I have a few like specific questions, so let's run through them, just so people can get to understand, certain aspects of the game a little more. So
Sure.
first of all, like what was actually like, with all the hype surrounding this game and everything, like what was it what was going through your mind when you first started playing, and were you drawn into the experience, pretty quickly, or did it take some time for you to really get drawn into it?
Okay, that's a very good question. Um, so let me just full disclosure right now. I understand that people are very hyped for this game, and I understand the being hyped for something that you have high expectations. Kojima has been very secretive as far as what he shows. He's also been very selective with a lot of the gameplay videos that have been out there. So I think going into this game, I wouldn't say that I was incredibly hyped for it. I figured, like most Kojima fans, the game will probably be good because Hideo Kojima is involved in it. And I do feel as though if you are a Kojima fan going into this experience, you may not have, you may look at some of his older work and you'll be like, well, it's probably going to be on this same level. And there are a lot of things in this particular game that do remind me of Metal Gear to a certain extent. But as I have already said, it's not Metal Gear Solid. This is a completely different type of experience. But going into it, I have to say that I just tried to just keep things even keel. I didn't try to be too hyped up about the experience. I just wanted to know, I wanted to fully understand why people were so hyped for it. Um, so once I had a good chance to finally start playing the game, and I don't think I have a problem admitting this because I believe that this is something that even Kojima admitted himself. The story does take a while to really get really sink in. I think one of the biggest things that people, when they saw the recent gameplay footage of this game, they look at, well, pretty much you're playing as this character, Sam Porter Bridges. He's a delivery man, pretty much. And I know that we've had jokes in the past on whether it's the co-op or some of these other shows we've recorded said, this is like almost Amazon Prime, the game, really, because you're delivering stuff. But really, there's a lot more to it than that. But I think if you're just looking at that gameplay, I could understand someone's looking at that and they're going to be like, well, this doesn't really look all that amazing. Um, and for me personally, as I started to play this game, within the first 3 chapters of the game, um, pretty much just there are story things that do happen. Something that there's a pretty important moment that happens at the end of chapter 1, but still I wasn't really fully invested into the game until the stuff that happened at the very end of chapter 3, which again, I'm not going to spoil, but I will just say that the story takes a very dramatic turn, and then that's when you realize there's a lot more to this story than just what's on the surface level, what we have seen. So I definitely would encourage anybody that does pick up this game, don't go into this game thinking right away, oh, this is going to be, because it is an action game. Don't think that means that right away you're going to be able to do a lot of things that you would normally do in a Metal Gear Solid game. Like, for example, getting access to weapons and stuff. That happens eventually over time. And they do encourage you to take non-lethal means against enemies, which is something that we have already seen in Metal Gear Solid games as well. But for the most part, you definitely are encouraged to use stealth because you have to navigate as you're doing these deliveries. You do have people that are after you, whether it's the mules, who are the guys. The mules are basically, these are former couriers who they lost their minds and now they are completely obsessed with just getting packages. So if you are making a delivery and you do pass by their territory, they're going to be coming after you specifically to get the packages that you have on your back. Otherwise, they won't really care about you. But if you have any packages that you are delivering to another location, they will come after you right away. And then, of course, you have the BTs, which are referred to as the beach things. These are pretty much the remnants of people's spirits that are left over after the massive explosion that happens at the very beginning of the game. And a lot of this stuff is all connected, which if you read my review, you have more of an understanding. But pretty much these are creatures where if you walk anywhere near them and they catch you, they will just come after you. And then this is if when you've seen in the trailer where you'll see like the footprints and stuff like that, these black masked creatures, really individuals, they come towards you basically trying to devour you. You know, because if they eat you, then you die. And you know, luckily your character is a repatriate, so he is able to come back to life. But obviously, to avoid those characters, they do encourage you to hold your breath and just walk past them. So a lot of this stuff, I'm just giving you as a primer, just to let you know, when you start playing a game like this, it takes a little bit of time to really get into it. And of course, you are spending, when you're doing these deliveries, why it's such an important part of the game is you're making connections with every region you go to connect them to a chiral network. Once you're connected to that network, you get better weapons, more advanced tools, so on and so forth. So stuff like the weapons being upgraded, that has to happen, but only if you are completing these deliveries. So I just want to give that as just to give people like a heads up if they are going to jump into this game. It is going to take a little bit of time to get into, but I'm telling you, once you get past the end of that of chapter 3, you will be hooked because the story gets significantly better. And then you'll see that there are other elements of what's going on in the actual world, in addition to you having to actually do these deliveries to rebuild the world. Yeah.
Okay, so like with the story kind of taking a while to you know, really kick in gear and everything, is the gameplay actually fun? Like, what did you think of the gameplay mechanics, and you know, did they keep you entertained throughout, even when the story was a bit slow? Like, was the gameplay actually engaging enough to you know, keep you going through it and being entertained and, you know, stuff like that? So let us know your thoughts on the gameplay.
Yeah, so the gameplay for me it's like, this is one thing that I think a lot of people, when they saw this game, that probably was something where they said, well, that doesn't look fun, and therefore I'm going to avoid the game. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. That's why I didn't really understand. I understand they wanted to be secretive about what they showed. Now, obviously, in the launch trailer that they released a few days ago, they showed a lot more of the game to give people a better idea of what to expect. But in terms of the gameplay, I mean, it really heavily leans into the delivery stuff. Like, but I will say, even though it leans into that, it does it well to the extent that, obviously, when you do start to acquire items, because essentially you're delivering resources to these other regions where there are people that you have to connect to, and some are going to be very resistant to you as you go through the game, and they may not want to connect with you on the chiral network. You may have to do a favor for them. So I guess some people would equate this to being like, it is a fetch quest to a certain extent, but when it comes to actually doing the deliveries, like, this isn't something where you just, well, I can just grab a whole bunch of packages and then I'm just going to easily get to my destination. It is not that easy, because if you carry on too many packages at once, obviously it's about the weight, it's about your cargo management. If you have too many packages on you, it's going to cause you to shift from side to side, and you'll have to hold down the R2 and the L2 triggers on the actual controller. And then when you're holding those down, you're still moving forward. So you're moving forward, but you're moving a lot slower if you have a ton of things you're trying to carry, as opposed to if you have maybe one or two packages, you can move around a lot quicker. But you always have to be conscious of how you're moving and shifting. And again, as you start out in the game, they're telling you that you need to walk to these other regions. These are not places that are close at all. Some of them are close to get to, but again, they could be in enemy territory, which means you'll have to go through enemy territory. You have no way of going around it. But you know, it's again, much like with the storytelling, it takes it takes a while to get into the gameplay, because while you're starting out with not a lot of tools, once you start to connect all these different people to the actual network, they have access to other resources that you do need to actually do your job more effectively. So they kind of give you the incentive to do these deliveries, because it does help and make things easier for you as you move forward. And the other element about that is the multiplayer really significantly is, I feel, the most important feature besides the graphics, besides the story. The multiplayer is the most important element of this whole thing because pretty much after you get to these different regions and you connect to the chiral network, then you'll have access to the exact same structures that other players used before you to get there. So if you needed to climb up like you needed to go up, walk up a hill, or you're trying to go over a snowy mountain, you can get access to ladders, you can get access to climbing anchors. I mean, some of that stuff you already can get access to, but if you don't happen to have any readily available on you, once you unlock it, get access to a new region that you've unlocked on the network, then you'll get access to other structures that other players have already put up. And as you get deeper into the game, they really do take the whole goal of rebuilding the city to a new level, because then you're able to start building roads, building zip lines, building bridges to go across from one side to another. Because one thing that I do think is worth mentioning is that if you do need to get across to like another piece of land and there's a huge river in between, if you try to go into that river and you have all of these packages on your back, then you will float and the packages will pretty much just go all over the place. So this stuff is definitely important. But again, as I said before, the gameplay takes a while to get into. And again, it's all about how much time you're investing into actually doing these different things, making these deliveries. And then if you can get over that, then it does get easier in terms of there being more resources available to use, so on and so forth. But again, it really depends on if you are cool with that process. One thing I said in my review is that it's very repetitive with the whole delivery stuff, is because it pretty much, the process is the same. You make a delivery to a distribution center. There will be a hologram of the person accepting the delivery that will pop up. They'll give you some small talk greeting of, "Oh yes, I've heard a lot about you." Then they check the package, and then they go back and you say, "Oh, it's in perfect condition," or so on and so forth. Then you'll get like a score of how long it took for you to get there, what route you used to get there, what is the condition of the package, how fast you got there, so on and so forth. And they give you basically a score based on all of that stuff. In addition to, they also, in this game, they use likes. So if anybody has ever seen like a Facebook like or stuff like that, they use likes pretty much to help build up your reputation as an actual delivery man. They use that in the game as well. And all that stuff counts towards your actual grade. And it also allows you to level up your status, which then pretty much as you level up your status, it does give you the incentive to do other things. Like let's say before, you could only carry a certain amount of packages. So if you get to a certain status level, then you'll be able to have more space to available, handing more packages, stuff like that. So really, really, again, it's about how much you invest into it. But the only thing, like I said, is you have to get over this whole thing with the deliveries, and you have to be willing to grind and do these delivery missions. Because if you're not into that, then I would tell anybody you might not want to play this game, because it does get frustrating after a certain period of time as you get deeper into the game. Because again, you do have to deal with the enemies. And then one other quick thing I wanted to mention is that in the game, they do have these storms that they refer to as timefall, which is pretty much like a rainstorm and a snowstorm. But the thing is that, but the way that rain and the snow, the way that it's affected in terms of the science, is that the minute that either rain or snow touches whatever objects you have on you, it deteriorates the objects over time. Now, the good thing is that there is a container that all of these items are placed in. So the container definitely takes massive damage anytime that you're outside in one of those storms. It's going to take some significant damage. But the goal is to always make sure that the actual contents of the package are not damaged. So again, if you know anything about deliveries, and you know I do because I've been doing Uber deliveries now for about 6 months. That's why I felt I could definitely relate and have something to say about this because I've been doing this. And yeah, if you know anything about deliveries, though, it's about time. It's about making sure that the product is in excellent condition. But again, if this is something that you saw in the gameplay footage where someone has to do this stuff and you don't want to do any of that, then I would tell you you might want to avoid this game because it's definitely something that you have to get used to, and it is going to be frustrating at times because it's not going to be easy all the time. But if you do put the time in, you will be rewarded and you will be able to get through it. And hey, you may even like it. And it does get easier after you start to get a certain amount of deliveries. Then you can also do standard deliveries and bot deliveries in which you can have a bot do these deliveries for you. But again, if you don't spend time building up the world, building up the roads, building up the resources, whether it's a zip line, so on and so forth, to make traveling easier, then the bot is going to get damaged as it's delivering these products on your behalf. And that may mean that the products may not ever make it to their destination. So, like I said, there's a lot to unpack with that whole process. But again, if you saw that gameplay video and you said, man, I don't like this delivery stuff, I'm going to tell you that, okay, you might want to be careful not to pick this up then, because it's a lot of that in this game, and a lot of it is crucial to actually getting through the story. So just make sure you are aware of that before you jump into it. But it's definitely still worth it. But again, if you don't like it, then it's going to be hard to really start to like doing it all of a sudden. So.
Okay. Well, I do have like more questions regarding that, but I don't want to like spoil too much for the people listening because I definitely want people to get out and experience it for themselves. So I'll skip the question I was gonna ask, but I'll move on to the next one because I have some more.
Well, if it's not a spoiler heavy question, I could possibly answer it, or I can give a hint on it. It depends.
Well, like how much do the babies like contribute? Like, how much do the babies affect the gameplay?
Great question. And I probably should have addressed that earlier. I'm glad that you mentioned that. The babies, pretty much, the bridge baby that Sam discovers early in the game. There is a deeper story that goes into that, which I'm not going to spoil. But essentially, the bridge babies are pretty much babies that are just like the BTs. They're split between the world of the living and the dead. So essentially, when you carry that baby on you, I mean, every mission that you go on, you do have that baby with you for the most part. And it is important because when you go into these territories where there are the BTs, the baby can sense that, and they will give you hints that this is a dangerous area that you're entering. And that's why that's necessary, because you do have a cargo scanner or a Terran scanner that you can use to scan the environment around you. But the baby is essential because the baby is able to dictate and determine when these creatures are going to show up. So you have to pay attention to this type of stuff because it definitely comes up often in the game. But for the most part, the baby is there, as it does have an important role in the actual story. I'm not going to spoil that particular thing, but I will just say the babies are important in terms of your overall journey. And also to piggyback off of something else is that there is a story behind the babies, which is explained to a certain extent. But it is connected to not only Sam, but there's other characters that also have a connection to these babies as well. So it's definitely something that I want people to experience for themselves. But what I can say is, it definitely that is one element about this game that definitely kept me interested in playing, because I wanted to see how they were going to explain what the baby's purpose is, how it's important to the overall story, how it's important to the character development, stuff like that. And yeah, I was very happy with how they explained that, because it all made sense once they explained it. But I don't want to give any spoilers about that, but I will just say you definitely will learn. We had jokes in the past. You will learn when a baby cries, you got to take care of the baby. They do have a couple of instances where when you aren't making deliveries, there is like a private room that you can go into, and your character pretty much can, in that private room, you can check on the baby. You'll tab on the casing that the baby is in, and the baby will interact with you back and forth, stuff like that. Pretty much trying to build a bond with the baby. But yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is just just a side thing. And one thing I will mention, because I actually didn't put this in my review, the private room in and of itself is pretty much, you're able to just interact with different things in that environment. You can use that to, I guess I can say, go to other, once you complete certain distribution, once you make certain connections at certain distribution centers, you're able to use a fast travel option to go from one distribution center to another. So you can only do that though within your private room. And the other thing, of course, is that, and this is one thing I also didn't mention in the review, you can shower in that room. The good thing is that you can skip past the scenes. So you don't need to see Norman Reedus naked if you don't want to. But one thing I did find interesting is that when you shower, because of how the character is, pretty much whenever you shower, you use the bathroom. A lot of those substances within Sam's body can be used to actually make weapons, such as
substances. Wow. Okay.
Oh yeah, like when you shower, that's referred to as the X grenade number 0, and that it could be used as a grenade. When you take a piss, that could be used as a grenade, and when you take a dump, that could be used as a grenade as well.
Okay, so I don't really want to hear about all these substances in the shower right now. So.
Yeah. I mean, but this is the weird humor. I guess that we know that with Kojima games, he's always had stuff about people using the bathroom and stuff in the games and stuff like that. So some of that stuff is definitely in this game to a certain extent. Again, though, these are non-lethal means, because if you throw like a grenade that's made from your shower water at an enemy, it's obviously not going to kill them. It may, leave them stunned for like a quick minute or two, but it's not designed to kill them, because they don't want you to kill people in the game, because it does impact the world in a negative way. But with that said, it's just a lot of really weird stuff in there with the jokes and stuff like that we know we know are usually in Kojima games, and people who find humor in that, they will enjoy that for sure. But just to get back on the topic, the bridge baby is definitely important. So I'm definitely going to encourage people to really get that experience for themselves. I don't want to spoil what that story is about and how it's all connected, but it definitely is a major part of what's going on within the actual world.
Fair enough. So you mentioned Norman Reedus taking a shower and everything. So I wanted to ask you, how was Norman Reedus's performance in this game?
Oh, okay, that's a great question. I mean, I thought Norman Reedus did a great job. Really, I feel like a lot of people in this game did a fantastic job. The whole cast is very impressive. I think, obviously, you have a lot of people that know, they're familiar with some of the people on this cast. The actress, I believe her name is Margaret Qualley. She plays Mama in the game. This actress was actually in a movie that I saw not too long ago, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Quentin Tarantino movie. She does an excellent job in this game also. But Norman Reedus' character, this is one thing that I definitely like about the game, is how they actually build and develop the characters. One example I gave in my review, and I will use this example once again. For those that ever had a chance to play Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, if you remember the Cobra unit that was in that game, you had enemies like the N, the Sorrow, the Fury, so on and so forth. All those characters had backstories as to what happened to them. They had weaknesses, and of course, you had to take them down a certain type of way in order to actually defeat them. In this particular game, every character that you come across has a backstory. of how the void out that happened at the very beginning impacted their lives for better or for worse. So you actually find out about what happened to them as you play through the game, and that which I think is great. That's a great way to tell a story and to really make you care about these characters beyond what's going with them. And even with Sam, he has a backstory as well. It does take a little while for that to really be revealed because the point is for you not to know everything about Sam. You know a lot of information about him within the first chapter, but you find out a lot more as you progress through the game, which is great. That's how it should be. But overall, I would say that he did an excellent job. I know that he has come out in an interview recently. He said Kojima is a genius. Really to emphasize that he is a genius. And as I said in my review, yes, the way that they tell the story and they have the stories of all these other characters. I mean, the whole point. This is why it is an excellent concept because again, the game is referred to as a action Strand game genre, and the Strand, as I said earlier, is a connected. So once again, the story is connected in terms of the characters that they are connected. And then the world is connected. So everything is truly connected. And it has a reason for the way that it is. But overall, Norman Reedus did an excellent job. So I'll be curious to see if, he does get a couple more roles in a couple of other games if he decides to. I know he was in one of those Walking Dead games. The game was really bad, though. I think he just lended his voice and likenesses to the characters. But he did a phenomenal job in this game. So I'm curious to see what this can do for his career in terms of getting into more video games in the future.
Okay, that sounds good. And that's one of the things I love from Hideo Kojima games, like the fact that like every main character is like real fleshed out with the background story and everything. So good to hear that there's more of that in the game also. So like, I guess like the next question, before the final question that I have for you, the next one is basically like because you mentioned the story taking a while to pick up and everything, and it really picks up steam as you move further into the game and everything. So I wanted to ask you, like, by the end of the game, was your overall opinion of the game changed, like based on looking back at the entire journey of the game? Like, because you might have within the first like 5 to 10 hours or so, you might have thought one thing about the game, but then once you hit that ending and you had the entire experience behind you, like you might have thought completely different about the entire experience. So like, did that happen to you? Like, did your opinion change at all at the end?
That's a good question. So I will say it did in terms of the actual story. Yes, I mean, one thing that I did mention is that the gameplay, it does get repetitive, just in terms of the actual deliveries. There are other things that happen in the game that I actually had a lot of fun doing. Besides the actual deliveries, but some of that stuff I can't really get into without actually talking about more details. So I don't want to spoil any of that. But what I will say is the story definitely it draws you in, and you're curious to see how it's going to actually conclude. So by the time I got to the ending, well, I thought, yeah, this is a great game. It's a really good game. The messaging in the game is very spot on, and there's also a lot of themes that they really try to touch upon, including politics, which obviously, if you know about Kojima games, once again, there's a lot of political things within those actual games, So that definitely is in this game to a certain extent. But by the time I concluded the game, I thought it was great. I still would caution people who are looking at the gameplay and they're not really convinced that they want to spend a lot of time doing the delivery stuff. Well, I still would tell them that they have to really think about that. I mean, because again, there's a lot of grinding when it comes to making these deliveries. And I mean, you do know when you're doing a delivery, you're actually providing a service, but it's not. It's more than that, because you are looked upon as the one that people need to rely on to save the day, so on and so.
Whoa.
But the whole premise of the game is to save the day. So that stuff is not original. But again, the story itself is compelling. The characters are very compelling. You want to find out what happens to certain characters. So that could be enough to convince somebody to say, okay, I need to keep playing. And that's how I felt when I started playing it, because I wasn't really, I thought the delivery stuff is fine in the beginning, but when you start to continuously do it for a period of time, it does get to be tiresome. Now, I will say that sometimes some of those delivery things are optional, but there are a lot of times where it is critical that you have to do it because it is heavily tied to the story. So when that stuff happens, normally it means that, well, this is a time delivery. It has to be done by this amount of time, or these are very sensitive items that you can't damage. If you damage them, then the mission has failed. Stuff like that. But essentially, we already know from day one when Kojima talked about this game and when he started to reveal more details about the game, the main character is a delivery man. So you have to remain true to that in terms of what his actual function is in the actual game. So I understand that, but it definitely can be repetitive. But for me, once again, the story was definitely enough for me to see what would happen. The characters were characters that I cared about, so that definitely also motivated me to get through to the end. And of course, I also wanted to see what other stuff I could gain by doing these deliveries. So all of that played a role in me actually wanting to get through the game. So I would definitely say in the beginning when I started, I kept my expectations in check. Maybe thought things were a little repetitive from the delivery standpoint, but by the end of the game, everything came together and I was understanding of and an appreciation of the storytelling, the characters, so on and so forth.
All right. So here's the $1 million question, the final question that I want to ask you today. So is Death Stranding Hideo Kojima's best game?
This is a great question, Gary. And here is my controversial answer to that question. I have to say, no, it's not. See, here's the thing. I really, really like the game. If you've seen my score, you've already seen and said that I gave it a great score. That doesn't mean that it is the best game on the planet. I mean, there's a lot of games that still to this very day I think about as being some of the best games I've enjoyed. I put Mass Effect 2 on that list for sure. So it's not really, wouldn't really do justice to say it is the best game that Kojima has done. Because, again, when I look at his body of work with Metal Gear Solid, that series is just, it's almost unfair to compare. But that series is just, it's just so amazing. That whether it's the characters, there's so many memorable moments. And don't get it twisted. There are memorable moments in this as well. But I just feel like certain aspects about this game, I don't really know if it's something that everybody is going to be really drawn to like that. Because, again, you do have the delivery stuff, the political storyline. I don't really know if people are into politics. If everybody's into politics, somebody who is not into politics or they believe certain ways, they may not agree with some of the things they talk about in this game and some of the things that they show. But, again, I appreciate the fact that it is a great game. And if there are a few things that I can say that really make this game a standout game, of course, the story, which I already mentioned. The graphics, though, by far, the look and feel of this game is absolutely phenomenal. And, of course, they're using the Decima engine, the Decima engine that was used in Horizon Zero Dawn and Until Dawn. But Kojima has made some improvements to that engine in terms of the world environments and stuff like that. And, I mean, it looks absolutely incredible from a visual standpoint. And I was surprised with that because, again, I'm playing on a base PS4. I'm not playing on a PlayStation 4 Pro, and I don't have a 4K TV. So I can only imagine how much better this is going to look, not only on a PlayStation 4 Pro, but also on PC when the game comes out next year. I think it's going to look absolutely incredible, even more so than that. Um, but yeah, graphically, the game looks fantastic. Story-wise, the game looks fantastic. And the last thing is, once again, the multiplayer, because that is so critical. It is so critical to the experience. Because if there's somebody that doesn't like the whole, I don't like doing a delivery because I have to face these BTs or I have to face these mules, and I don't want to have to go up that route because it's a very steep hill, and I'm concerned about that. Again, there are structures that people build in the game that you gain access to after a period of time once you've actually completed certain regions. Now, I do want to say, because they are aware of this, the time fall that I mentioned earlier that deteriorates objects over time, it also does deteriorate structures over time. So if anybody was to start playing this game, say maybe on launch day, and then they decide to put it down for like a month or so, and they go back into it, some of the structures they had access to, they may no longer be active, but by the same token, others might be available because others have had a chance to play it. So it really depends. But again, the multiplayer function, it gives you the incentive to actually get through the game, because if you, I mean, I'm not going to lie, you may look at some of these deliveries, the distance that you're traveling, as a daunting task. But again, if you know that you have access to structures that can be built, such as roads, so on and so forth, it definitely makes things significantly easier to navigate the actual world. And again, it once again falls in with the line of, you are rebuilding the city, you're rebuilding the region, you're rebuilding the world to make it a better place. So I definitely would say I would love to see a lot more games that really do play around with this type of content in terms of how they use multiplayer and online, because it really encourages you to work with others. And you don't necessarily have to talk to other people, because I mean, I didn't see any of the characters that I didn't have any interaction with any of the other players in the game. There are some NPCs that you come across, so on and so forth. You'll see porters in certain areas after you've built them up. But for the most part, you don't have access to the actual people, but you do have access to their structures. And again, that is great encouragement for you to actually actually be committed to actually getting through a mission. So I definitely appreciate that. So to answer the question finally, I wouldn't say it is his best game. I would say it's a solid game. It's a great game, a fantastic game for, because I know Kojima Productions is independent now. So a fantastic game in those regards. But I still think the Metal Gear series, it cannot be touched. If they do decide to make more games for this particular franchise, then yeah, I think he could definitely make an even better game the second time around. But with that said, it's still a solid first outing for this particular title. But the best, groundbreaking, amazing, I can't say that, man. But I can say the online is amazing. That's groundbreaking. The graphics are amazing. And the storytelling is, once again, this is just the type of stuff you would expect from a Kojima game. The story is always on point. And again, with the gameplay, some of that stuff, the deliveries being the main thing. I mean, there's a lot of that in the game, but as I said, if you can get through that and you are invested in getting through that, then you will see this game has a lot more to offer. And in those regards, it's definitely worth checking out.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, like, what would you say is the best Kojima game? Like,
Oh man. Ouch. Well, man. Well, there's going to be some controversy behind this. I have to say, for me, it is still, to this very day, it's still Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It's still that game. I enjoyed Metal Gear Solid 1.
that's a great pick.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like even with that Snake Eater song, that song is still stuck in my head. I hear that song from time to time, and it's like it stays stuck in my head. Okay, the characters like the boss, and you seeing the boss turn on Snake in the game. Like, I remember all these moments from the game, and it's just like, and then I just like how they built that game, how they structured it, and then as I mentioned, with the enemies you have to face, it's like every enemy, you can't beat them the same type of way. There are certain things you have to do in order to actually take them out, and all of that tells me it's very meticulously well thought out. So there are things about Death Stranding that you can tell it is very meticulously well thought out, but it's not an instance where, like with this game, where you have to take out the enemies like that. There are enemies in this game you definitely have to take out. So I'm not saying that that's not true, but with this it's a lot different because I just think there was just so much in that game, the timing of it, the characters, the storytelling, all that stuff is just at the very top of my list. So with that said, that definitely is my best game. I would consider that to be my favorite Kojima game, but that doesn't mean that Death Stranding is a slouch by any stretch of the imagination. Like I said, I'm very curious to see what they do with this franchise moving forward. If they decide to make more games in the series, that'd be great. But for right now, it definitely is still something worth checking out, but only if you are totally cool with the fact that you're going to be having to do a lot of deliveries. You're going to have to backtrack certain areas to do this, that, or other. If you're totally cool with that, and you are invested in that, then you definitely will enjoy this game for what it has to offer.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, I mean, Metal Gear Solid 3 is a really good pick. I don't think anyone could be mad at you for that. You know, that's like that's a classic game. Like that game is like up in the clouds. Like it's one of like of all Kojima's games, like that's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of all his games. So I mean, can't debate that. But yeah, that's pretty much all my questions that I had. So I'm gonna pass it back to you, and I guess give the final word on Death Stranding to the people.
Absolutely. So, like I said before, when we started this show, Death Stranding, it's I enjoyed the game overall. You can check out my review on the website. Did not want to really get into a lot of spoiler territory, but I'm pretty sure that in the future, I'll probably have another discussion where I do talk about some of the spoilers, after the game has already been out and everyone has had a chance to play it. Probably definitely will revisit it and talk about some of the moments that I enjoyed the most, so on and so forth. But for now, for those that are curious, does it live up to the hype? That depends in terms of what you're looking for in a Kojima game. If you want a good story, then yeah, you're going to get a great story. If you want good characters that you'll care about, you'll get that as well. The gameplay, again, that depends on if you're totally cool with doing this delivery stuff. And of course, you do get to use weapons, you do get to use stealth stuff of that degree. But really, to me, the delivery is heavily a part of this, which makes sense for the context of the character. But again, if you are totally cool with all of this stuff, it is worth checking out. I mean, I don't really think I thought I was fair and just in my review. So I'm pretty sure that we will see about that, as people do get a chance to check it out, any feedback that I hear about it. But for the most part, definitely a good game, in my opinion, and something that you should check out if you are interested in what it has to offer. But again, you would know better than me if you saw that gameplay video and you did not like the delivery stuff, then perhaps you should avoid it. But again, if you do make the time to check it out, you might be surprised by just actually how good the game actually is. So check it out if you're interested. The choice is up to you. And remember, tomorrow is in your hands.
Fair enough.
So that concludes our brief discussion on Death Stranding. Feel free to leave your comments on the game if you had a chance to pick up the game or you're planning on picking up the game. Feel free to let me know later on what you like and didn't like about the game, because I'm always curious to hear other people's feedback on it as well. And stay tuned. We'll definitely be having more content coming to you sooner rather than later.
Indeed. So yeah, drop your comments, like this post, and let us know what you're feeling about Death Stranding, especially after reading all the reviews. Like, make sure you go to the Koalition.com to read the review right now as well. So definitely do that. So yeah, peace out from us.
Yes, peace out. Talk to y'all later.